My name is Bill Kane. I'm the Basalt town mayor, and I'm very pleased to have with me this afternoon Heath Harmon. Heath has come all the way from Eagle today. Heath is our Director of Eagle County Public Health and Environment and has been an incredible resource to our valley and our community as we've waged through the battle with COVID for now almost 7 months. So Heath has been a fabulous asset for this community and full of good advice. He's really helped our local businesses, restaurants get adjusted for the summer business, and has been just a boon for our community. So what we wanted to do today was do a quick update on the state of play for COVID. As we all know, there's been an uptick. There are increasing concerns. We have some sort of wild numbers at the national level. I think we had 500,000 cases in 1 week, which is pretty astounding. Mm-hmm. So question I think in the forefront of everyone's mind is, what can we do locally? So Heath and I are going to kind of go back and forth and cover a couple basic areas, but welcome and thanks for coming over.
Yeah, my pleasure. Thanks for having me over, Mayor Kane. It's a pleasure to be with everybody today. And hopefully we'll provide some good information and information that you can use today, tomorrow, and over the next couple of months.
Yeah, and you'll note we are not wearing face masks. This is not because we don't have the utmost regard for face coverings and social distancing. We have plotted out 6 feet here, so we're in full compliance with our local code. We are exercising social distancing here. So let me kick it off. Our first question, Heath, has to do with, I guess, just the alarming news now about increase in cases and unfortunately increase in hospitalizations. Our state director, Jill Hunsaker-Ryan, warned us that on the current trajectory, we may well get back to April numbers, which were high and terrifying in terms of hospitalizations if we don't change course or if we can't deflect this curve one way or the other. So could you comment on that and kind of give us a sense of where we are with hospitalization?
Yeah, happy to. I think in the region and then also in the state, ever since Labor Day weekend, we've been in a slow tick up. That said, over the past 3 weeks, regionally, so Pitkin County, Eagle County, Garfield County, we've all seen a much more significant increase. And so that's not only in the case counts, it's also in those hospitalizations, right? So in the summertime, late summer, our region also saw an increase in cases. However, at that point in time, we actually saw a lot of those individuals were among, or cases were among younger age groups. So we didn't see high risk in terms of underlying health conditions, and we didn't necessarily see it in older adults that much. That said, in the past 3 weeks, we've seen that change. So just thinking about Eagle County numbers, and this is true for the region, but just to kind of drive the point home, in the past 2 weeks, we've seen as many individuals in the 60 and older age group as we had seen in the previous 4 to 6 weeks. So we're definitely seeing a shift into different age groups. And so unfortunately what that's doing throughout the state, it's driving some hospitalizations. So we're definitely at a point in time where those early alarms are sounding, and we want to try to make sure we implement and revisit some of those precautions that we have had all summer long just to help contain that spread, maybe limit that spread, and get us back into a much more comfortable space.
Great. Well, that's helpful to know. The next question we had has to do with advice to our businesses. We have lots of restaurants and retail shops that are now trying to plan for the winter season, where we're going to have a lot of indoor business. We'll have new guidelines and regulations for spacing and people at one time, maximum capacity things. Is there advice you could give or thoughts that we could pass on to business and restaurant operators about what they should be thinking about getting ready for winter season?
Yeah, I will. One good piece here is that actually in terms of COVID transmission, nothing's new. All right, so we know, I think, the right precautions to put in place, and so I think what we want to do is double down on those precautions. Key things are always going to be that space and wearing face masks. Thankfully, I think for all of our municipalities and all the counties, we have that sort of as a mandate. In addition, the state has also implemented that mandate, but masks and distance are going to be key. I think for business owners in terms of smaller retail shops, one thing that's going to be helpful is just thinking about the amount of space that you have indoors and really thinking about what's the the appropriate number of people that can fit in that space where each individual can always maintain that 6 feet of distance. Again, that's going to be critically important, that distance and then those masks. One other thing that I'll put out there, maybe two other things for people to consider, is the duration of time being spent together. So realistically, we know a close contact is defined as somebody who has been within 6 feet of a person that's infected for 15 minutes or longer. So if we're thinking about that 15 minutes, and whether this is in a retail business or a restaurant is a little bit harder to kind of implement, but in other places and in our own personal gatherings, that duration is one thing that we have a lot of control over. And so if we can shorten that duration when we're interacting with individuals, that might be helpful. But then back to the businesses, ventilation is really important. So not only ventilation, but filtration. This is right now the time to definitely be checking on your HVAC systems if you haven't done so already, making sure that the flow is appropriate for the size of your space, and also checking those filters and making sure that you replace those filters. So again, same information that we've had all summer long, so nothing new. I think the new piece here is that colder temperatures, people are going to be indoors more, and so I think we have to pay attention a lot more to that spacing.
Yeah, great. Yeah, I think the next question we had really deals with, again, kind of the winter environment indoors. Thoughts about you get a call from your best friend and they want to get together for dinner, and what are we thinking about that? What are the safeguards, and should we just avoid, or can we socially distance, or how would you advise us about these indoor environments this winter?
That's a great question, because one thing that we need to understand about why our numbers are increasing so much right now is it's the type of interaction. So we're still seeing this mainly in our private and personal social gatherings, right? So right now in most counties throughout the state, that limitation was at 10 in advance of last week. Last week we put in, or I should say the state put in, a new public health order that brings down those personal gathering sizes, no matter what phase you're in, down to 10. And also another key addition to that is no more than 2 households. What we really want to do is limit the amount of separate households that are coming together in those congregate settings. The reason for that is that when we have multiple families that are coming together, we're seeing then the risk of exposure, therefore the transmission. It's impacting more people, more families, and if those families have kids that are in school, it's impacting a lot of other classrooms and might implement quarantines within those spaces. So I think the key thing as we're thinking about the winter is we want to limit the size of those gatherings, right? In the public health orders for the state, it's pretty firm that number's 10, no more than 2 households together at any one time. But realistically, reconsider gatherings. Certainly the larger the gathering, the more time people are spending indoors together without masks, then the higher that risk. I think the key thing here is in those private, personal, social gatherings, there aren't necessarily rules in place, or there's not somebody that's enforcing the wearing of masks or the maintaining of the distance between individuals, right? So I think what we're doing is we're letting our guard down. We're coming back into those comfortable spaces with our friends and family members. And I just have to be honest, with the transmission that's happening in all of our communities right now, it doesn't necessarily mean that you're not at risk, even if you're hanging out with somebody that you trust. We see a lot of community transmission that's also happening out there. So again, I think around those gatherings, especially thinking about holidays, we really need to think a little bit differently about what that's going to look like this year, keeping those gathering sizes down to a minimum. And I know it's going to sound weird, but keep your mask on, even if we're congregating with families. If you are going to spend a little bit of time over the holidays around family and friends, and you're going to be indoors, whether it's your house or their house, keep that mask on, keep that distance. It'll feel a little bit weird, but realistically what we want to do is limit the amount of spread in our communities, because what we want is a much better winter season. We all live in ski resort communities, and we all also want to make sure that we're keeping our kids in school as long as possible. So these are some key things, and it all starts at home.
Wow, great advice. We're working you pretty hard here. Our next question has to do with testing. Can you? I know we had a little bulletin this morning that we may have a drive-in facility in the Pitkin County end of the valley. Can you tell us about testing and what the state of play is there?
I can. There's a number of different types of tests out there, but instead of going into the test, let's just talk about the availability. And so one thing that the state has been doing is working really hard on making sure that testing supplies are available in every community within the state of Colorado. They're doing a great job. And so There's also going to be access to more rapid testing that's quickly coming into this region. And what that does is that helps us get those test results within about 15 minutes, maybe as many as 30 minutes. So that's really good news for us when we're not feeling well and we go into the clinic. Then we get those results turned around very quickly. And we know that if we're positive, then we need to stay home and isolate. And we also know at that point in time that we need to contact the rest of our household members and bring them home and then help them through quarantine for 14 days. And so in Pitkin County in particular, this is where a lot of work has been happening. And so there will be some new opportunities here in Pitkin County. Obviously, we know the hospital's doing some testing, but there will be 2 new clinics, I believe, that get set up in the near future. So stay tuned for more information that'll actually be coming out from Pitkin County Public Health. But I think what that will do is that will mean that everybody in the Roaring Fork Valley will have better access to that testing. And I think, what that access means, we'll definitely see people getting in to get tested more frequently, and that is the first step in helping to spread or control the spread of this virus.
Yeah, that's really, really great. Well, the last one we wanted to ask you about was maybe see if you could provide advice to our citizens about thinking about the holiday season. So, people are all kind of on tenterhooks here trying to figure out whether they're going to have family come or not come. Are there any special sort of dispensations, or is there possibility of getting tested before people travel? Are there things that you could advise in terms of mitigating risk for families that are visiting during the Christmas holidays or Thanksgiving?
Absolutely. I think, again, I'll reiterate, reconsider the size of those gatherings. I know with Thanksgiving coming up really soon, that's the holiday where we see the most significant amount of travel here in the United States. And so what that usually means is people are jumping on planes and they're traveling across country. And so I think this is the time of year to really start thinking about, is this the travel that I want to do? Is this something that I want to take on myself in terms of risk and or put other family members at risk? Again, if you are going to travel, what I recommend is that you're keeping those gathering sizes to a minimum. And again, paying attention to those state and local public health orders. I've already talked about what that looks like for the state of Colorado, but pay attention to the public health orders that are in place if you're actually electing to travel elsewhere for the holiday. I think a couple of things that are going to be important, when you're traveling by air, you're going to have to wear that mask. I think everybody's aware of that. Our airlines and our airports are doing a great job trying to think through what are the right protocols to keep everybody as safe as possible. That said, whenever we are traveling about, we can't eliminate all those risks. So make sure that you have that mask when you're traveling then through settings that might be a little bit congested. Do your best to try to maintain that 6 feet of distance as best you can, and keep a log in terms of the places, the times, and the people that you might be seeing if you are traveling that way. If you do get sick, it makes it a lot easier to do some of the contact tracing. I think as it relates to testing and traveling, this is one thing that's been coming up an awful lot lately. So depending on where you travel and depending on what airline, there's different things that are available. One thing I would offer up based on experiences that we heard with fall break is that some airlines and or some destinations are requiring at least a PCR, a molecular level test that shows that you're negative 3 days before you get on that airplane. So the key thing here is those tests might not always be available within that time frame. It's really important to know before you go, what are the requirements from your airline, what are the requirements from your destination, and then making sure you can plan ahead for that testing. Right now, because the transmission is so significant in every community throughout Colorado, it just means that there's more people that need to get those tests, and we want to prioritize those tests first and foremost for individuals that are symptomatic, that have that illness, that might need that isolation, and then that contact investigation. But again, I think the key here is know before you go and just think safely. Again, the precautions to limit the spread, nothing new there. Distance, masks, decrease that time as best you can, and really reconsider some risky gatherings this holiday season.
Excellent tip. So that PCR is the polymer chain reaction test. Is that the gold standard now? Is that kind of...
It's actually been the gold standard, I think, for the whole summer and through the fall thus far. I think the good news is that with some of the rapid technology, we're actually able to turn that PCR technology around much faster.
Great.
So again, just know before you go, but that's going to be the gold standard in terms of travel. So I've seen that in some destinations, they're requiring that type of a test. And again, that needs to be submitted, collected and submitted at least 3 days before you travel.
Good news.
Again, those things, those protocols could change. So just be in touch with your airline.
We'll do it. Well, that probably is a wrap for us. That's a lot of information in a short period of time. And once again, we really appreciate you coming over. You guys are a great asset for us, and we'll be staying in close touch. So
no doubt,
thanks.
no doubt. Hey, you know, I know everybody, this has probably been used way too much, but let's face it, we are all in this together. We haven't faced a pandemic ever before at this level, and so it's definitely putting a lot of pressure on us, a lot of anxiety, a lot of stress. I just want to acknowledge that it's not something that is easy for folks in the public health world too. We are just really trying our best to think through how is it that we can help all of our community members work through this in the safest way possible. And I think of it this way also, to the degree that we can actually limit the spread, bring these numbers down, what that does in all of our community environments is it creates more flexibility. Creates more flexibility in our schools and our places of worship, in our businesses, on our ski mountains. So long story short here is that the more we can do to prevent spread within our community now, the greater flexibility we'll have through the entire winter.
All good advice. Thanks.
Yeah.
Heath, that's a wrap for our update on
Great.
COVID, and thanks everybody for tuning in and watching.
Thank you.
Well, we know that the discussion of COVID is kind of unsettling and a bit unnerving, and we wanted to get this message out so that everybody can be thinking about how to best adjust for the winter and for the holidays. We shouldn't lose sight of the fact that we have some very positive things happening in the community, very exciting matters. The Takaw Theater has got its roof on, the sides are on, that building's going up. We have the Stedman Clinic is underway. They're in their foundation construction phase of work. We have the town just completed a grant cycle for businesses in town to use our CARES funds to support businesses that are making adjustments for the winter. A good number of applications have been filed, and those awards will be made, and that disbursement will go out. We're making headway finally on the CDC riverfront parcel, and we're in the final steps of recording a final plat, which will allow us to complete the public purchase of the project, get some of this black fencing down, and start working on landscape improvements and get this park in a shape where it can be really enjoyable and useful for everyone. So that work is going on. The town will be prepared to be at the ready to assist the community during this winter season. We're going to keep a eagle eye peeled and keep an eye out for people that are facing stress and difficulties. We have had good luck in our sales tax revenue. The town is in a fiscally strong position. We have reserves on hand to weather a pretty tough storm if that is what is presented to us. So we are here ready and willing and able to help. So I guess with those thoughts, we want to thank everybody for watching our video and learning about getting ready for the fall and COVID. And we wish everybody a great Halloween and a great holiday season. So thanks very much.